Yordenis Ugas says that wasn't Errol Spence in the first Terence Crawford fight. What's good, everybody? It's your boy, Cardinal Red. But let's talk about it. Alright, y'all. So, Yordenis Ugas, I believe, has a fight coming up here really soon, welcoming him back to the sport. And he recently gave an interview and he spoke about why he feels like that was not the best Errol Spence in the first Terence Crawford fight. I wanted to give my 667 nickels on that and break it down for anybody listening.
I don't fight fights 100%. I go into a lot of fights where I'm less than 100%. Who knows what is going to happen? But I'm going to fight through all of that. Really told you I came here like, nah, I'm not going to stop.
All right, y'all. So, was that the best version of Errol Spence that could possibly be brought to the table versus Terence Crawford? Not only that, was that a masterful or a dominant performance by Terence Crawford? So I wanted to answer both of those questions kind of in the same video.
What's up, niggas? Can you hear me when I say hey?
Now, when it comes to the first question, was that the best version of Errol Spence? I highly doubt that was the best version of Errol Spence. I know personally from what I've heard from other boxing channels speaking on the topic and, other boxing analysts speaking on the topic, articles I've read since the fight, that things happened during the training of Errol Spence that couldn't be avoided, for lack of a better word, and it had a serious effect on the outcome of that fight. Now, whether you believe that or not, that's solely up to you and how you choose to view sports. But I do find it highly funny.
You cannot tell me he ain't got a small jammy.
That for some reason, boxing, one of the most brutal sports, there's MMA, there's karate, there's other mixed martial arts type sports. But in one of the most brutal sports, it's almost like injuries can't happen. It's like people believe that these fighters are superhuman or subhuman for some reason, and they just don't tend to believe that these guys could get hurt. But in every other sport, football, nobody makes excuses when a gigantic football player turns his ankle and he can't play to the best of his ability, and he might miss a tackle that costs, a certain team the game. Nobody is not believing that, or a basketball player who injures a finger, who normally puts up 40, who only puts up 20 in a very important game and kind of costs his team the game. Nobody believes that those injuries are fake or those injuries can't happen. But somehow in one of the most brutal sports out there, people just don't want to believe that injuries or things can happen during these camps that can keep a fighter from performing at his best.
Never be embarrassed about what you really feel and your truth.
And, I just find that to be funny. Even in one of the fakest sports ever, wrestling, people believe the injuries in wrestling even though they're written into the storyline. It's almost comical, man. When I think about it, 'cause I used to be a huge wrestling fan, like when I was in my teenage years and younger. I was a big wrestling fan, and once you realize that wrestling is storylines, then you realize that a lot of this stuff is just not real, but people wholeheartedly believe when a wrestler gets hurt that it's a real injury. And I just think it's funny that, people refuse to believe that a professional boxer who gets punched in the face for real every day for a living can't possibly get hurt.
Silence! I can't take this shit no more.
But, it is what it is. Now, was that a dominant performance by Terence Crawford? I don't call it a dominant performance. I think that he made Errol Spence look very bad. Errol Spence made himself look very bad because of the performance he had to bring to the ring.
You done talked about me enough, boy. I tried to be peaceful.
Things happen, but, it is what it is. It happened. He's a man. He's moved on from it. But what I don't believe is that was a dominant, masterful performance by Terence Crawford for a few reasons. Number one, that wasn't the best version of Spence, so it couldn't have been that dominant if you weren't fighting the most dominant version of Spence. Number two, everybody feels like Terence Crawford was on steroids. He was on snack. He was eating them good snacks, and that wasn't the real Terence Crawford to begin with. So his performance was enhanced in a lot of people's minds. And, I think that's crazy because of my third point. I don't feel like it was dominant or masterful because if you look at Errol Spence just hours after that fight, he didn't even have a mark on his face. And most fighters that I would say that they had a masterful fight or a dominant performance, they really did damage to their opponent. They did long-lasting damage to their opponent.
But now it's time for Reggie to karate-size your ass. Woo! Oh, yeah.
Now, like with the Ugas fight, if you think about it, Ugas hit the fractured eye bone, fractured orbital bone. Took him what? I think it's been it's almost over a year since we seen this guy in the boxing ring. So, to me, that's masterful. That's dominant. He kept Ugas out of the ring for nearly a year because he beat him up that bad. So, that's a dominant, masterful performance. Even Manny Pacquiao, we think about Manny Pacquiao, he fought guys and, did serious damage to them, like Miguel Cotto, like Margarito. Ricky Hatton knocked him out cold. If you even think about Manny Pacquiao's record, if you look back at his last few fights, I think his last 10 fights, go back and look at those. Most of those guys are either retired or semi-retired after fighting Manny Pacquiao. And Errol Spence, I feel the same way. If you look at some of his past opponents, like Danny Garcia, like Mikey, after the Mikey fight, I believe Mikey Garcia retired after that fight. Danny, I haven't seen him in the ring in a while. I'm not sure if he's still active. Ugas was semi-retired because of fighting Errol Spence. Even look at Keith Thurman. If you look at guys like Keith Thurman, Manny Pacquiao basically sent him into retirement. You look at Lucas Matisse, Manny Pacquiao sent him into retirement. You look at Brandon Rios, Manny Pacquiao basically sent him into retirement. You look at Jesse Vargas, Manny Pacquiao basically sent him into retirement. Adrian Broner, Manny Pacquiao basically sent him into retirement. He's back a little bit now, but he was basically retired for a few years. I could go on and on. Ricky Hatton knocked him out cold, sent him into retirement. So I think those are masterful, dominant performances. And Errol Spence has a few of those once again. He basically sent Yordenis Ugas into retirement for almost a year and a half, basically 2 years almost. Now, when you look at Terence Crawford, yes, he made Errol Spence look very bad in that fight, but he did no real damage to Errol Spence. He didn't break any bones. I don't even think he cut him, to be honest with you. He might have cut him in his mouth, but those heal up pretty quick. He didn't break any bone. Once again, if you look at Errol Spence 23 hours after that fight, his face looked like it was normal again. It didn't even look like he was in a fight the day before. So, I don't consider that fight masterful or dominant because he didn't leave any lasting effects on his opponent.
But there's one thing I couldn't beat, an embarrassing condition called my balls was hot.
That's dominance. Yordenis Ugas was dominated. Ricky Hatton was dominated. Keith Thurman was dominated. That's dominant performances. So, I don't think that Terence Crawford was dominant. Plus, why do you need snacks if you're that talented? That's one of my questions about the whole snack thing and why I don't really believe it's as big and as bad as everyone's making it out to be. Yes, some of the things he might be giving people to enhance their performance might not just be for strength, it might be for endurance. So he might not be, breaking people's bones and things like that. But, I would say, what's the point of having that stuff if it's only there for endurance? There's things you can do naturally to make yourself last longer in a fight, and you don't have to risk your whole career by getting caught with PEDs to use these things. So, I really don't believe wholeheartedly that Terence Crawford is on like super snacks, because there was nothing in that fight that made me go, you know what, yeah, he's on something.
What did you just put in your mouth?
Gum.
You ain't chewing no gum.
Candy.
What did you put in your mouth?
BCP.
Oh, you just said!
Wow.
There was really nothing in that fight, because when you think about it logically, if Errol Spence was actually weight drained, which he was, Terence Crawford's natural ability would allow for him to move Errol Spence around the ring with ease, simply because he's lighter than he normally should be. If you get used to being at one weight, if you lose, 30 pounds very quickly within a week, it's going to be easy even for a slim, smaller guy like me, very athletic toned like me, to move that person around, even if they were 100 and let's say 80 pounds the week before, and they go ahead and drop 30 pounds, which would make them 150 pounds around my size. I would then be able to move them around because I'm always walking around at this weight. So this weight is average to me. It's very easy for me to do things at this weight. So I've carried this body weight, and I know how to maneuver with this body weight to where they're lighter, and they're going to feel lighter after all that. So I don't think that Terence Crawford necessarily even needed snacks to win that fight, because he knew that Errol Spence was walking around at a certain weight, and once he lost that weight, it was going to be very easy for him, who normally stays pretty active and stays kind of around his fighting weight, to move Errol Spence around the ring.
Am I the greatest of all time? I told you, all of my critics, I told you all that I was the greatest of all time when I beat Sonny Liston. Never again say that I'm going to be defeated. Never again make me the underdog until I'm about 50 years old. Right. Then you might get me. I didn't dance for a reason. I wanted to make him lose all his power. I kept telling him he had no punch. He couldn't hit. He's swinging like a sissy. He's missing. Let me see your box. I hadn't started dancing yet. You can't say my legs are gone. You can't say I was tired, because what happened? I didn't dance from the second round on. I stayed on the ropes. When I stay on the ropes, you think I'm doing bad. All boxers, to put this in a page of boxing, staying on the ropes is a beautiful thing with a heavyweight when you make him shoot his best shots and you know he's not hitting you. I would have gave George Foreman 2 rounds of steady punching, because after that he was mine.
Y'all let me know what y'all think about all that down in the comment section below. Hit that like button for me. Sure. Subscribe. Holler at me on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. But you're more than likely to get a response on the tube, so holler at me over there. If you want to collab or feature a product or your channel or my channel, feel free to hit my Gmail, because it is a flock of cards at gmail.com. We are mine.
I'ma keep it funky with these niggas. I don't give a fuck about your mixtape. I'ma keep it funky with these bitches. I don't give a fuck if your kids ate. I'ma keep it funky with these niggas. I don't give a fuck if you got a plan. I'ma keep it funky with these bitches. I don't give a fuck if you got a man. I'ma keep it funky with these niggas. I don't give a fuck if you getting money. I'ma keep it funky with these bitches. I don't give a fuck if it was your cousin. I'm still fucking. Keeping it funky. I'ma keep it funky with these niggas. I'ma keep it funky with these niggas. I'ma keep it funky with these niggas. I'ma keep it funky with these bitches. I'ma keep it funky with these bitches. I'ma keep it funky with these niggas. You don't need to know if you gotta ask. I'ma keep it funky with these bitches. If I'm fucking with you, then you gotta ask. I'ma keep it funky with these niggas. Don't come to the hood, you don't have a pass. I'ma keep it funky with these bitches. Be careful, don't get robbed for that Prada bag. I'ma keep it funky with these niggas. Sometimes you gotta let a nigga know. I'ma keep bitches. Every girl ain't a bitch, but every bitch is a hoe. Hey yo, I'ma keep it funky with these niggas.